The echo of gunshots on a still January morning has a way of rewriting the rules of silence. On Olive Street in Collinsville, Illinois, the world was just waking up when the cracks of gunfire pierced the dawn. The sound was so foreign and violent, it seemed to freeze time itself. Within moments, residents flung open their doors, eyes wide with adrenaline and fear, as they stumbled into the cold embrace of winter air. The scene they confronted was one that would haunt their dreams. Portia Rowland lay crumpled near her garage, her vibrant life extinguished in an instant. Detective Elise Grant arrived at the scene amidst swirling red and blue lights. The neighborhood hummed with hushed whispers and the frenetic energy of officers cordoning off the area. Elise's eyes scanned the chaos with practiced calm, but her mind raced with questions. Who would do this? And why here, in such a seemingly tranquil enclave? As Elise approached the lifeless form of Portia Rowland, she noted the stark contrast between the woman's colorful attire and the gray pallor that death had bestowed upon her. Neighbors described Portia as vivacious, always seen laughing or jogging with her golden retriever Max. But beneath that cheerful exterior lay a history peppered with tumultuous relationships and whispered scandals. The investigation began in earnest. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, questioning bleary-eyed witnesses who offered little more than incoherent murmurings about hearing loud bangs and the shadowy figures fleeing into the night. There were no immediate leads, just a growing list of questions. Back at headquarters, Elise pored over Portia's social media profiles and recent text messages. Amongst the usual chatter, one name surfaced repeatedly: Richard Vaughn. His estranged wife had been close to Portia in recent months. Too close, some might say. Rumors swirled about a possible affair or a friendship that had crossed lines. The plot thickened when an anonymous tipster claimed to have overheard a conversation at a local bar implicating Vaughn in something sinister. Elise's gut told her this angle was worth exploring further. The next day, Elise met with Richard Vaughn in his sparse office downtown. He was a man whose every gesture screamed control, from his meticulously pressed suit to the measured cadence of his speech. Yet there was something off about him, an undercurrent of tension that belied his composed demeanor. Portia was a friend, Vaughn insisted, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying flickers of unease when Elise pressed him about motives or possible personal grievances. Elise left Vaughn's office with more questions than answers. She knew she needed something concrete to connect him to Portia's murder, something beyond circumstantial ties or whispered allegations. As Elise returned to the precinct, her phone buzzed insistently in her pocket. It was Officer Marks from Forensics. "Detective Grant," Marks said breathlessly, "we found something odd in Portia's car." Elise's pulse quickened as she listened to Marks describe an envelope tucked beneath the passenger seat floor mat. An envelope containing receipts for large cash withdrawals made by Portia over several weeks leading up to her death. Who was she paying? Elise murmured aloud, though she already suspected where this path might lead. Just as she hung up, her phone buzzed again. Another message from an anonymous source. "It goes deeper than Vaughn." The words sent a chill down her spine as she realized how far-reaching this web of deceit might be. As dusk settled over Olive Street once more, Elise knew they were only beginning to unravel a plot far darker than they first envisioned. The words from the anonymous source echoed ominously in Detective Elise Grant's mind as she pulled up to the precinct. "It goes deeper than Vaughn," they'd said. Her fingers drummed against the steering wheel, her thoughts tangled in a web of potential conspiracies and hidden motives. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. Officers clustered around desks, whispering about the new developments. Elise headed straight for her partner, Detective Sam Harper, who was reviewing the latest findings from forensics. Marks found an envelope, Elise began, her voice low, hidden in Portia's car. Receipts for large cash withdrawals. Sam raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. So Portia was moving money, but why, and to whom? As Elise relayed the details, their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a commotion at the entrance. Officers were escorting a man in handcuffs, a young, disheveled figure with a defiant glare, Travis Cole. Looks like they picked up one of our suspects, Sam noted, standing as Travis was led past them. The arrest added a tangible weight to their investigation. Elise and Sam moved quickly to the interrogation room, where Travis sat slouched in his chair, eyes darting around with restless energy. Travis, Elise started, her tone firm but not unkind. We know you were with Daniel Reed the night Portia was murdered. Travis smirked, shaking his head. You think I wanted any part of that mess? I was just doing what I was told. Elise leaned forward, her gaze steady. Told by whom? Was it Vaughn? Or someone else? Travis's defiance faltered for a moment, his lip curling as if tasting something bitter. Vaughn, he admitted reluctantly, but it ain't just him pulling strings. His cryptic words hung in the air like smoke, leaving more questions than answers. The detectives exchanged a glance as they exited the room, their minds churning with possibilities. They needed more than Travis's vague admissions to unravel this case. As they returned to their desks, Officer Marks approached with another piece of evidence, a surveillance tape from a nearby ATM where Portia had made one of her large withdrawals. Look at this, Marks said, handing over stills that showed Portia withdrawing cash late at night. Elise studied the images closely and noticed something peculiar. A shadowy figure lingering just outside the camera's range, unidentifiable yet eerily present. Someone was watching her, Sam observed quietly. The discovery added a chilling layer to their investigation. Who was this shadowy figure? An accomplice? A threat? The day stretched into evening as they continued to piece together fragments of evidence and testimonies. The tension in the precinct mirrored the looming storm outside, rain tapping insistently against the windows. Just as they were preparing to call it a night, Elise's phone buzzed with another anonymous message. You're looking in the wrong place. Her heart pounded as she read those words aloud to Sam. They both knew this wasn't just about Vaughn anymore. There were darker forces at play. As Elise stared out into the night, rain pouring down like questions without answers, she realized their investigation was on the brink of exposing something far more sinister than they had ever imagined. The rain drummed relentlessly against the precinct windows as Detective Elise Grant read the anonymous message, "You're looking in the wrong place." Those words gnawed at her, an ominous echo from the shadows of her mind, as she sat across from her partner, Detective Sam Harper. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the investigation, an investigation that seemed to twist further into darkness with every turn. Elise and Sam contemplated the new lead, the image of a shadowy figure caught on ATM surveillance still fresh in their minds. Who was this unidentified presence, and why were they watching Portia so intently? The air buzzed with a foreboding tension as they deliberated their next steps. We need to re-interview Daniel Reed, Elise decided, her voice cutting through the hum of fluorescent lights. If Travis hinted that Vaughn isn't the only one pulling strings, maybe Reed knows more than he's letting on. Sam nodded in agreement, his eyes dark with determination. Let's see if we can shake something loose, he replied, pushing back his chair. The interrogation room was a sterile box, its walls closing in with each heartbeat. Daniel Reed sat across from them, his demeanor a mix of bravado and thinly veiled panic. Elise watched him closely, her instincts sharp as a blade. Daniel, Sam began with a measured calm. Travis claims he was following orders when Portia was killed. We need to know whose orders you were both following. Reed shifted uncomfortably, his hands twitching on the table. I already told you, he insisted, his voice wavering slightly. Vaughn paid us for the hit. That's all there is to it. Elise leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his with unwavering intensity. And what about this other person? The one watching Portia at the ATM? Who are they? For a moment, Reed's facade cracked. His gaze flickered towards the mirrored wall. A silent plea, or perhaps a calculation of risk, and then he spoke in a whisper barely above silence. I don't know their name, he confessed, but they were always around, always watching us too. The admission sent a shiver down Elise's spine. Someone else was orchestrating events from the shadows, someone even Vaughn might fear. As they exited the room, Elise's mind raced to connect these disparate threads. A third player in this deadly game complicated everything, and added layers to their unraveling mystery. Back at her desk, Elise reviewed recent reports and stumbled upon something curious. Phone records showing multiple calls between Portia and a number registered under an alias linked to a known informant on police radar for minor offenses. Her pulse quickened at this revelation. This informant could be their mysterious observer, or someone with direct knowledge of their identity. Just then, Sam returned with news that chilled Elise to her core. "We got another anonymous tip," he said breathlessly. "They claim Portia was trying to buy protection from Vaughn himself." The revelation hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Elise felt every nerve in her body electrify with urgency and dread. What if Portia had been playing both sides in a desperate bid for safety? And what did that say about Vaughn's real motives? Before she could voice these thoughts, her phone buzzed again, the latest anonymous message more cryptic than before. "Meet me where it all began." Elise exchanged a look with Sam that spoke volumes. They both understood what this could mean, a potential turning point or another deadly trap. As they prepared to leave, anticipation crackling between them like static electricity, Elise knew that whatever lay ahead would require every ounce of cunning and courage they possessed. This case wasn't just about justice anymore. It had become a labyrinth of deceit, where every shadow held secrets waiting to be uncovered. The rain had eased by the time Detective Elise Grant and her partner Sam Harper pulled up to the desolate lot on Olive Street. "Meet me where it all began," the anonymous message had said, echoing ominously in Elise's mind. The scene of Portia Rowland's murder was eerily quiet now, except for the whispering wind that rustled through bare, skeletal branches. As Elise stepped out of the car, her eyes scanned the surroundings with practiced vigilance. She felt a familiar tension coil in her stomach, a blend of anticipation and foreboding. Was this another clue or simply a trap? Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a figure shrouded in shadows, emerging from behind the garage where Portia had met her tragic end. The figure's face remained obscured under a hood, but their posture spoke of urgency and fear. "Detective Grant," the figure said in a hushed tone, "you're getting too close." Elise took a cautious step forward, her instincts on high alert. "Who are you, and what do you know about Vaughn's involvement?" The figure hesitated, glancing around as if expecting danger to leap from every corner. "It's bigger than Vaughn," they whispered. "You need to look at who stands to gain from all this, who benefits from Portia's silence." Before Elise could probe further, the figure turned and vanished into the night, leaving only questions in their wake. Back at the precinct, the air was thick with tension as officers buzzed like bees in a hive. Elise relayed the cryptic encounter to Sam, who listened intently. "If Vaughn isn't the end game," Sam mused, "then who is pulling all these strings?" Their conversation was abruptly cut short by Officer Marks rushing over with new evidence. Forensic analysis of Portia's phone had uncovered a series of text messages with someone using an alias, messages filled with threats and demands for money. "Looks like Vaughn wasn't just playing one side," Mark speculated. "He might have been leveraging Portia's secrets, too." Elise's mind raced as she reviewed the messages. Each line hinted at desperation and fear. Portia had been caught in a web she could not escape. The detective's attention shifted as news broke that Daniel Reed was ready to talk again, his resolve apparently shaken by recent events. In the interrogation room, Reed's earlier bravado had all but evaporated. He sat slumped in his chair, eyes red-rimmed with anxiety. "I didn't sign up for this," Reed blurted out before they could even question him. "It was supposed to be simple, scare tactics, but then it got out of hand, and then Vaughn started asking for more than I could handle." Elise leaned in closer, her voice calm but insistent. "More what? Money? Information?" Reed nodded shakily. "Both," he admitted. "But there's someone else. Someone who wanted Portia gone for good." His eyes darted nervously to the corners of the room as if expecting invisible eyes to watch. The revelation hung heavy between them, a chilling confirmation that their suspicions were correct. Vaughn was just a piece of this intricate puzzle. As Elise and Sam left Reed to his own haunted thoughts, their minds churned with possibilities and dread. Just then, Elise felt her phone vibrate, a new message flashing ominously on the screen. "You're running out of time." Her heart pounded as she shared it with Sam. This new threat meant their investigation was on borrowed time. They needed answers before everything unraveled completely. The stakes had never been higher. Each step forward felt like walking on thin ice over deep waters filled with secrets waiting to drag them under. The message, "You're running out of time," buzzed in Detective Elise Grant's mind as she stood in the precinct's dim hallway. The weight of urgency pressed down on her, the threat's shadow long and foreboding. She glanced at Sam Harper, her partner, whose eyes mirrored the same tension that coiled within her. "We need to find who's behind all this before they find us," Sam muttered, his voice low yet resolute. Elise nodded, determination sharpening her focus. They moved back to their desks, poring over the evidence once more. Every clue seemed a step closer to the truth, but the larger picture remained frustratingly elusive. Each piece of paper was a breadcrumb leading them deeper into this dark forest of deceit. Then came a spark, a new angle they hadn't considered. What if Portia was blackmailing Vaughn? Elise proposed, her mind racing through the implications. It would explain the money, the threats, why Vaughn needed her silenced. Sam considered this, nodding slowly. "It makes sense," he agreed. "But we need proof, something solid to connect Vaughn directly to her murder." His fingers tapped restlessly on the table. Their conversation was interrupted by Officer Marks rushing over with another breakthrough. A partial fingerprint analysis from the envelope found in Portia's car matched someone in Vaughn's known circle, a close associate with a history of minor offenses. "If we can place this associate at the scene or link them to the gun used in the murder," Sam said, excitement threading his voice, "we might just have our smoking gun." Elise felt a surge of hope tempered by caution. They needed to act quickly before their adversary could cover their tracks. As they prepared to dig deeper into Vaughn's associates, an unexpected call came through. A local journalist with information too sensitive to share over the phone. They agreed to meet discreetly at a nearby diner. The diner was a relic from another era, its neon sign flickering against the encroaching night. Inside, Elise and Sam settled into a booth, their senses heightened for any sign of danger or deception. A young woman approached them, a journalist with nervously darting eyes and a notebook clenched tightly in her hands. "I think I know who's behind this," she whispered conspiratorially as she slid into the booth opposite them. Elise leaned forward, her gaze steady and encouraging. "Tell us what you have," she prompted gently. The journalist took a deep breath before revealing her scoop. Vaughn wasn't just protecting himself. There's someone else who stands to gain from Portia's death. Someone with more power than you'd expect. Before she could elaborate, headlights swept through the diner's windows, momentarily blinding them and sending panic flaring through Elise's chest. She turned instinctively towards the source, an unmarked car idling ominously in the lot outside. In that moment of distraction, their informant slipped away into the night, leaving behind only questions and an unfinished confession. Heart pounding with adrenaline and frustration, Elise knew they were closer than ever, but still steps behind whoever orchestrated this deadly game. The chapter closed with Elise staring into the darkness beyond the diner's glass walls, knowing that with each passing hour, those who had set this chain of events in motion were tightening their grip around whatever secret Portia had taken to her grave.